Now that you've seen different ways that the HTML5 canvas can be used, let's jump into some of the fundamentals that'll help you get started with it. So first, let's discuss some of the key features it offers. The canvas, as I mentioned earlier, provides a drawing surface. You can think of it just like a painter's canvas that we're going to draw on using either some pencils or pens or more likely a brush. And we can do all kinds of things with it because it's pixel based. Now, it's not vector such as scalable vector graphics, SVG. It is rendering pixels. So if you want to zoom in, zoom out on it, you're going to have to take into account the scale factor yourself and render the graphics as appropriate. Now you can draw all kinds of things with it, shapes, lines, gradients. You can even embed images and video. And I showed some of that in the previous demonstrations. And it really provides for some nice interactive experiences that you can build if that's what you'd like to do with the canvas. It does provide built-in support for transformations. You can do things such as rotate and scale, and I'll show a little bit of that as we get into the course more. But there's no built-in support for animations, so if you are going to be using the canvas for gaming, you're not going to be able to tie into some type of animation library like some frameworks have, such as Silverlight or Flash or other plugins that are out there. You're going to have to take care of the animations yourself and write a game loop. And in the game loop, you'll be firing some type of timer every certain number of milliseconds. And when that fires, you'll call an update function, which will then move the pixels. So you'll have to erase the pixels that were there, clear them out, and then re-render those pixels. And we'll talk about some of that as we get a little further in the course. Now, to actually get started with the canvas, you need to add a canvas tag into your HTML document. So the tag definitely matches up with the functionality. And you'll typically give it an ID, and you're going to want to set the height and the width, and you want to do it the way that's shown here, as opposed to using CSS styles or CSS classes. I've found across pretty much all the modern browsers, if you do it with CSS, it won't render as expected, so it's pretty important that you define a width and a height attribute on the canvas tag. The actual steps to get started using the canvas are shown here. So first off, define the canvas element. Well, that's pretty easy, as you saw in the previous slide. From there, we're going to be jumping into JavaScript. The only HTML you'll do with the canvas is defining the canvas tag. From then on, you're going to be writing a lot of JavaScript. So first thing you'll do after defining the canvas is locate the canvas ID. And you could use jQuery, you could use document get element by ID. We can then access something called the 2D context, which I'll show a demonstration of that coming up. And then finally, once I get the 2D context, which I like to think of as a pen or a brush, I can now use that 2D context to actually draw onto our canvas surface. And now I can draw rectangles and arcs and all kinds of different lines and things of that nature. Now, let's walk through these steps real quick before I actually put a demo together for you and show how these steps can be used to render some basic drawings on the canvas. So first off, we're going to go in and define the canvas. Now when you do this, any content that you put between the start and the end tags would be displayed if the canvas isn't supported. So you actually could have a nice fallback, and if you wanted to resort to something that you know browsers will support, such as Flash, then you could actually define something like an object tag and have an SWF or whatever it may be to act as the fallback. That way, if a browser doesn't support it, you can go ahead and still show some type of rendering into the web page. So that's kind of step one. With step two, we want to go ahead and locate the canvas ID. And in this example, I'm just using the standard window on load. Now, if you're using something like jQuery in the document ready, you could do the same type of thing, of course. But basically, once the DOM's been loaded, you'd be ready to find the canvas by ID and go ahead and work with it. Now, once we found that, we can then get to the context. And this is a special type of context called a 2D context. And at this point, that's all we have actually for the canvas. One really important thing with this is the case does matter. I've accidentally tried it with an uppercase D and found that it doesn't work so well. So you do need to put 2 with a lowercase d to get the context. So getContext is a function off of the canvas object. Once we have the 2D context, we're ready to go. We have the canvas, which is like our painter's canvas, and now we can use the 2D context to actually start to draw onto the painter's canvas. So now we can go in and do things such as setting the fill style. In this case, we're going to set it to red. And then in this simple example, I'm going to fill a rectangle. This is going to say start at 0, 0. The upper left-hand corner of the canvas is 0, 0. We want it to be 200 pixels on the width and 100 pixels on the height. And that's the basic steps you'd go through to locate the canvas, get the context, and then from there it's up to you to render different types of shapes. So let's jump into a demonstration. I'm just going to do a hello world type demo and see how we can put these steps together and render different types of things to the canvas.